we're going to have a look at story on One News tonight. It is about the latest fallout about the pay equity changes. The government is saying carte blanche, Labor is lying, because what Labor is saying is, this government has basically given pay cuts to women. So, and just put this out there to start with. The reason that's accurate is not because money has been removed from their bank today. It's that there are hundreds of thousands of women who are in the stages of going through pay equity cases who next week would have had more money, who now are not going to. This is why I said last night, this government has just made it harder for hundreds of thousands of families to have a better Christmas financially. Because we're not saying it's going to make a difference from last week's paycheck to next week's paycheck, but as these cases are heard and those 33 actions were resolved, then they would have had parity or equity and be paid more money. And some of them may well have got back pay as well. So the government's doing this mealy mouth thing where they're going, no one's had a pay cut, which might have a technicality which is true to it. However, I guess you could even go along with inflation. No increase with inflation is akin to a pay cut, but the pay increases they were in the processes of getting have been cancelled. I'm also going to show you something very interesting. There is a group called Straight Families First, or they call Conservative Families First, or Budget. Certainly not gay families. I think the name of the group is Straight Families First. And they have a show on the internet. I think you'll see where their inspirations come from. And they had on this week, I think most people, there'll be many words for the people they had on. Christo-fascists, alt-right, far-right, conservative, alt-right, fascist conservatives. And the thing about this equality for women equity thing that is most interesting is how this government's ballsed it up. And I'm going to show you how these people with these voices who are so anti-Labor, anti-woke, anti-green, anti-everything are all with one voice saying this government's really dropped the ball. We'll do that after this story. Here we go.
Claims of lying and gaslighting flew thick and fast today as the scrap over pay equity for women continued to dominate political debate. The hot topic overshadowed pre-budget speeches from both National and Labor just over a week out from Budget Day, with the pay equity changes set to save the government billions. Political editor Mikey Sherman has developments.
It was a battle of the pre-budget speeches today, and with the countdown on,
just 9 sleeps to go.
The gloves are off.
I think we are at a moment that requires...
She's talking about like it's Christmas to your kids. It's not going to be Christmas. It's going to be Christmas if at Christmas time Santa comes down the chimney and takes your presents and runs away with them. That's the kind of Christmas it's going to be.
Just combine the two sayings. It's just 9 more sleeps to no lolly scramble, kids.
No lolly scrambles.
There's some honesty.
The truth, he says, is women taking a pay cut through pay equity changes.
Yep.
We won't take it anymore.
If you're taking away money that women otherwise would have got in their pay, I think most people would regard that as a pay cut.
To tell an outright lie to New Zealand workers that women's pay is being cut. That is a lie.
National digging in its heels.
They are outright lies. That's what they're doing. That is untrue. That is a lie.
I think over the last week...
Wondering why they're not saying that in the House. It's funny, eh? They'll say it on the tiles, but not in the House. Wonder why.
We've seen the biggest example of a New Zealand government gaslighting half the population.
How are you not cutting pay when you're saving billions of dollars?
Because we've got a pay equity regime that's focused on eliminating sex-based discrimination.
Not an answer, not an answer, not an answer. Could you please explain to us how this is, how you're getting billions of dollars off the backs of women, yet this is not taking money from women? That's the question. Tell us where that billions of dollars is that was going to be given to these women, that's now not going to be given to these women. So how is that not removing money from these women? Word salad, word salad, word salad, word salad. Look at my shiny head.
I can see how they've workshopped this.
Yep.
Like
outright lie.
We're not. Well, it's not a pay cut because we haven't quite given the pay rise to them yet.
That's right.
So we've just taken it away, which is not a pay cut.
Yep.
It's such a Bush lawyer thing to do.
Yep.
And they've been doing this all the way through.
Yep, 100%.
Because we've got a pay equity regime that's focused on eliminating sex-based discrimination. It got completely out of whack under Labor, way too broad, way too loose.
Chris, let me just interpret for you. It got completely out of whack under Labor. What the Prime Minister is saying here is we need more money for our budget. We need it today. We can't look at the 2026 budget and take it from there because we're already overcommitted. So what I would say to you is we are going to take that money set aside for these pay equity cases, and we're then going to say to these women, we're taking it off, go and try again. Just in case anyone needed a bit of an interpretation there of what he was actually saying.
Chris Hipkins perhaps played into that narrative today, saying the country needs a mature conversation on debt.
If you look at the huge amount of infrastructure that the current government want to see New Zealand invest in, there's no way they're going to be able to do that out of day-to-day consumption. It's going to have to involve long-term financing.
Now, help me, Chewie, because I thought we were saying, and we said with Craig Rennie last week, 1.6%, that we actually should be borrowing for infrastructure. It's the wise thing to do. But unless I'm hearing this wrong, happy to hear it in the chat, it sounds like what Chippy's saying is, well, they're going to have to borrow for the infrastructure. And I'm like, but unless the criticism is they are saying they're not going to borrow and they're going to have to borrow, because all this way through we've been saying, well, borrowing for infrastructure in economic downturn is a good thing. Can you help me, Chewie, at all?
That's kind of what I thought Chippy's saying here, is that we need to have an honest discussion about what's good to borrow for and what isn't. And I think he's criticising the government here for saying that, they've heavily criticised Labor for borrowing. And then we're sliding into austerity and still borrowing.
Yeah.
So they're talking out both sides of their mouth rather than just being honest with us.
Right. So Steph says this is one of the interpretations. Steph says he's saying that Labor would borrow for infrastructure, which is what we've been saying all the way through.
Yeah.
But I get the sense that he's also saying the only way this will be accomplished is to borrow. So he might also be saying National's telling you they're not going to borrow, but they're gonna. So it's kind of a double, maybe a double snatch. He's like saying you should borrow, but they're pretending they're not going to, and they are. Are we now all agreed? We know explaining is losing. Are we losing, or are we just explaining?
I think that that's it. I mean, you can't sit there and cut your income. So they did that by that massive tax rort for landlords, right? You've cut your income. You've got more people unemployed than any time since the global financial crisis. So your tax take is down there as well. So you got less money coming in. You can't cut your way to an infrastructure spend up. So you're definitely borrowing as well. So we're getting the worst of both worlds.
All right. It looks like everyone's in agreement here that Chippy's saying you need to borrow. These guys are pretending they're not going to borrow, but they are. By the way, we would borrow. That sounds like, okay, so we're in agreement. Okay, let's go.
Structure that the current government want to see New Zealand invest in. There's no way they're going to be able to do that out of day-to-day consumption. It's going to have to involve long-term financing, i.e. debt.
Labor have pinned their colours to the mast and have made clear that is the approach they would take in this year's budget. I think that's irresponsible.
The Finance Minister calling it déjà vu.
New Zealanders saw what happened in the past few years when that approach was taken. This is not the time to double down on it. And just as our economic recovery has gotten underway...
Oh, this is quite nice to hear, Chewie. Do you know what? It's no longer... it's no longer blame Labor. Do you know what it is now? Blame the rest of the world. That's what it is now. Literally, that's what it is now.
Down on it. And just as our economic recovery has gotten underway, global events have conspired to make things harder.
Blame Trump.
That's just reality. We can't wish it away.
Yeah, but listen. That is reality. I actually agree with you, Nicholas. So what you do is you keep a little aside and you put it under the bed for a rainy day. You don't pull it out from under the bed and give it back to landlords in the top 1% in tax cuts. So she's actually right. You can't control that, but what you can do is have an amount set aside for when that happens. And that's what they haven't done. So they've got their hand caught in the cookie jar and they're a bit screwed.
This is why she is such an unserious person as a finance minister. Because, again, absolutely correct, has identified the problem, 100%. But when Labour are in charge, we ignore global situation. We ignore all of the international trade that it affects us as a heavy import-export country, isolated from everywhere else. We ignore that. It's completely Jacinda's mismanagement of everything. And Robertson's bad at being finance minister. Now they're at the wheel. Oh, well, we're just one tiny cog in the global economy. We're just being tossed around by the waves of economic uncertainty. And this is just realistic.
We'll keep going.
They are choosing austerity. Nicola Willis doesn't like that word, but it's absolutely true.
The government recently announced a $1 billion cut to the operating allowance in this year's budget, reducing the amount of new money it'll spend.
Is this an austerity budget?
No, this is not. This is a budget in which we will be spending more next year and the year after and the year after.
Please, we have to. I shouted at the screen when I saw this on One News tonight. That's the biggest look away, because of course they're spending more because they spend more every year. This is not like we're doing so good for the economy because we're spending more. If you've got 1 million people living in a country, you have to spend a certain amount. If the following year you've got 1.2 million in the country, it's going to cost more. So every year, every government spends more. So this is not the out you think it is, Nicola. I'm sorry, it's just not.
Next year and the year after and the year after.
So not austerity nor a lolly scramble budget, but certainly a scrappy one.
Mikey there. So there you go, Chewie. Budgets were, what they didn't talk too much about this was what the national government have announced today. There was $100 million, I think, for maths in schools. Happy with that, of course. More money for education, for whatever.
To Nicola.
Yep. And also $100 million given to a fund today who is going to, there was some interesting terminology. I should find the exact story. I don't know if I've got it. Talking about they are going to give to a fund, and that fund is about, here we go. It's the state-backed Elevate Venture Capital Fund is to get a $100 million injection in the next week's budget as part of the government's measure to boost high-growth technology companies with strong export potential. A couple of buzzwords in here which make me concerned. Finance Minister Nicola Willis announced the allocation in a pre-budget speech focused on government measures to lift economic growth through lifting productivity, like rail on, rail off ferries, those kinds of productivity. No. Now this is the part. Lifting productivity, exports, this one here, and encouraging direct foreign investment. So they put $100 million in a fund to do, amongst other things, encourage foreign money to come here.
So the government's building up a fund for gambling. That's great. Look, there's a lot that I'm nervous about after reading what she's said this afternoon. Did you catch the bit about them potentially taking money out of the super fund?
No.
And just basically raiding that piggy bank? A little bit. Like some years we might tax them out. Some years we might put some in. We're all loosey-goosey. We realise that it's going to affect everybody's super, but frankly, we don't care because we're all sorted. That terrifies me. Of course, historically, you look at National love raiding our super fund. When Rob Muldoon did it, he cost this country trillions.
Yeah, 100%.
So I'm real nervous to see, it seems pretty likely that the government's going to drop its contribution to everybody's super fund. It looks like they're going to raid it for their own needs. All of that is very, very concerning to me.